Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Roussel, got college football expert John Brice with me. Short version on Michigan. Michigan has received notice of pending beatdown coming from the Big Ten. The Big Ten made this announcement. Well, they didn't announce it; they leaked it. They did so based on the NCAA's findings. The NCAA has only been in there for a couple of weeks on this particular matter. The NCAA has been involved with Michigan football for other matters for quite some time. But the NCAA is in there right now based on what the NCAA has already found, and they have not found the money, which I find fascinating. Based on what they've already found, they told the Big Ten, it's safe for you to drop the hammer. NCAA new commissioner Tony Petitti has gone to his executive board and said, hey, here's what we know. I need your approval to take action. They've said, yep, go ahead. He goes and meets with Santaono, president of Michigan, on Friday. Santaono publicly leaks his email back to Tony saying, hey, we don't think this is fair. Don't do this. Give us a few months. Let the investigation fully run its course. And wherever that goes, it goes. Big Ten has said no. We have given you notice. We have to give you reasonable notice in the commissioner's own in his purview. And he has said it's by mid this week. He's given you plenty of time to address this. So it appears, based on national reporting by Ross Dellinger and other friends, that for whatever reason, Tony Petitti seems to be focusing his attention on Jim Harbaugh and potential suspension of Jim Harbaugh. And earlier this morning, John, Zach and I had a conversation. We talked about, okay, if you're going to nail Jim Harbaugh, why do you not also take down Jesse Minter, Sharon Moore, the other guys who are literally on video listening for what Connor Stallions tells them the opposing side is calling, and then those guys make their calls and their adjustments. Same guys who acted as head coach the first couple of weeks when Jim Harbaugh was on his self-imposed vacation. How do you just stop at Harbaugh? Where do you think this goes from here, John?
Well, I think you ultimately maybe center it on Harbaugh for what you and I just discussed right before hopping on this podcast, Scott, and that is the old head coach control rule that was really changed, I believe, in some brief research around 2011. And too many coaches had pretty much flaunted the technicalities by saying, "Oh, well, this was a rogue assistant coach in my program." I think it started out as a basketball issue for the NCAA. Too many basketball coaches were saying they didn't know about special arrangements made on the recruiting trail or special enticements delivered on the recruiting trail. And so you saw some coaches escape while some assistants got hammered, while some schools lost wins, and it continued from there. And so, again, about spring of 2011, the NCAA said, no, a head coach is presumed to have knowledge of the goings on in his or her NCAA program. So I think that's where this zeroes in on. And let's not forget the fact when you ask, and I know you're doing it for the sake of this podcast, why zero in on Jim Harbaugh? Let us not forget that they're already investigating Jim Harbaugh, that Jim Harbaugh has already been targeted by the NCAA for his alleged transgressions involving recruiting misdeeds during the COVID-19 pandemic in the summer of 2020, spring and summer of 2020, when he didn't just violate recruiting rules. It was supposed to be a recruiting dead period. And presumably, if Harbaugh wasn't at least tacitly acknowledging violating those rules, he would not have tried to serve up a negotiated 4-game suspension. The NCAA said, no, we're going to keep doing our due diligence. And so Harbaugh still set out the first 3 games of this season. So that's where it comes down for me. Look, you can't punish everyone you should probably punish right now without punishing the kids. And I know that there's an extreme debate on this in terms of, well, did the kids benefit from knowing this, and then therefore they won because of it? And we don't know for sure if the kids were aware, if the student athletes were aware of this very elaborate sign stealing scheme. So I can believe there was some ignorance on the part of the kids. I don't believe there's any ignorance on the coaching staff. I can't accept that, because we've seen too many video pieces of what appear to be concrete evidence, and there's more choreography than the Nutcracker.
There are 2 more things I want to talk about. One is the money, and the second one is the Central Michigan aspect, which is really it's small, but it's unique, and it's a potential over-the-top hammer that comes in later. But the money is the biggest thing. So 2 possibilities here. Well, 3. One is, and it's fairly remote, Connor Stallions just straight up funded all of this by himself. I think nearly no one believes that to be the case. And I say nearly no one, probably not 1 out of 100. Then you have two options. One is the University of Michigan paid for this. The second one is some other entity paid for it. So let's talk about those two. It's my strong held belief if the University of Michigan paid for this, it's a landslide out the door. You'll have 50 people leave Michigan athletics in connection. Anyone who authorized this, anyone who paid this, anyone who should have had monitoring controls coming behind an audit after the fact. Hey, why did we pay for this? Who are these people that we're paying to? Why are people going to games that we have nothing to do with? Why was there no system set up to stop that? The second one is if a coach, an outside entity, the camps, LLC, if one of those funded this, barring subpoena or Stallions himself admitting to it, which I highly doubt is going to happen, I don't know how the NCAA would ever find this. And it's going to take some sort of lawsuit and then discovery there to find this. But if they find out where the money is, that's when this whole thing, the whole house of cards collapses.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a paper trail of any sort beyond a slip that says petty cash Connor Stallions, if there's anything more than that, then it becomes tectonic at that point. It's seismic. And to your point, a lot of coaches use summer camps in a very positive way. A lot of coaches take the money from their summer camps and pay their guys and ladies on staff that are the lower tiered staffers that make 40 grand a year or maybe 55 grand a year. I'm just throwing 55 grand a year out there, not because that's Connor Stallion's salary, but a lot of people use that in a very noble way to reward people who pour in these hours and make not a great living whatsoever, but make absolute peanuts compared to the majority of the full-time on-field assistant coaches and certainly the head coaches. And so to your point, that would be explosive if there's any sort of paper trail involved there. I think Michigan very much does not want to see it get to the point of a paper trail. And you've also noted that it's been leaked out there to anyone willing to listen that Michigan would presumably take legal action against the Big Ten if it tries to impose a suspension or other sorts of current penalty against Michigan during this season. My question is, wouldn't that open it up for the rest of the Big Ten to take legal action if penalties are not imposed? If 12 other Big Ten schools have confirmed and presumably provided evidence to these investigators that they know Connor Stallions either attended himself or arranged for people to attend and scout them in person. I don't think it can be stressed enough. And Michigan's a public school, so I would be curious. I would like to FOI the FOIs at the University of Michigan in the last 3 weeks, because I would like to see what is being requested and what Michigan will comply with and what Michigan will try to skirt around. But I just think that the public institution component of this opens it up to a lot of FOI, freedom of information record searches, and Michigan absolutely does not want that.
Yeah, so now let's jump to the Central Michigan aspect. So this is Connor Stallions being on the sidelines, wearing Central Michigan coaching gear with a credential, a badge, a team bench area credential at Michigan State. So there's cameras at Michigan State. I'm pretty confident Michigan State has already taken a look to see what they got on camera of Connor Stallions being there, and the Big Ten likely has that as well. In the event the NCAA or the Big Ten can prove what happened there, and if he was sent there on behalf of the coaching staff, this is a massive, massive scandal. This is another one that comes over the top and sends JIm Harbaugh out the door if they can prove that he sent him. Now, to date, they have the NCAA, these investigators. They have nothing pinning all of this on Harbaugh, which is critically important, because if they did, this is over and done. This is black and white. They don't. But I can't imagine Michigan wants to get to a place where an outside law firm can come in here and sit down and interview Michigan's football coaches, Michigan's football administrators, Michigan's back office. It doesn't end well for Michigan.
I mean, if Michigan wanted to see that happen, and this unfolded October 19th, so we're 21 days or 20 days since it first broke, why wouldn't Michigan have issued a statement and said, we welcome a third-party firm to come in here and look at all of our records? We have, again, here's one thing that I think is important to stress, and I can't stress it enough because of how many coaches have reached out to us to drive this point home. It's not just that there are video cameras now for security reasons in virtually every major stadium, within looking at the stands and all of that, where you can see details like if someone is holding a camera right behind the bench and video. I think it's important to note how many coaches have stressed, and again, one of the quotes, "Dog, we film our own sidelines every week to see what we're giving away." Well, if you're filming your own sidelines, you've got all the video right there. If you could exonerate yourselves with that sideline video that you have in-house, you would have done it a long time ago so that this wouldn't be a distraction. And especially as much as Michigan had to deal with the distraction all through its bye week and then going into last week in the game against Purdue. And just one quick side note here that I thought was just laughably poor and tone-deaf propaganda today was the Big Ten Network tweeting out a video clip of Jim Harbaugh talking about his great friendship with Ric Flair. Nobody gives a bleepity bleep about Jim Harbaugh's friendship with Ric Flair with everything that's going on right now. And I just thought that was just gross negligence. Just
I'm with you. I got nothing. Yeah.
Just absolutely asinine. I won't cheapen real world events by comparing this to any real world events going on right now of any magnitude, but within the scope of sports, the sports entertainment industry and coverage of sports, I just found that laughably ridiculous and deliberately tone deaf. And it's not fair to the entire rest of the Big Ten for the Big Ten Network or anyone else to take a deliberately tone deaf approach.
I agree with you. I've seen a lot of folks out there saying, "Yeah, boy, we're biased in this. We're anti-Michigan." Actually, I like Michigan football. I like Jim Harbaugh. Jim and I have a history together. Um, I've done multiple things with Jim in the past, and a lot of those assistant coaches I would consider some of them friends. This is not an anti-Michigan thing. This is the rules are the rules, and if you cheat, I don't cheat and tell the truth. Always tell the truth. It's what I tell my kids every day. Always tell the truth, and trying to hide it is worse than the offense itself in some cases. And I'm disappointed from a university that holds itself out to be, haughtier than haughty and the upper echelon of integrity. That's not what is happening here. That is, we're trying to hold everything back for 2 more months. Let's get to January 10th, and then we can have this conversation because the championship would have played the ninth. And that's just not real life.
Which there's 2 quick points on that I will make. The January 10th element ultimately probably matters none because it's an open secret that for multiple years in a row now, Jim Harbaugh has tried to leave for the NFL. He went to the Minnesota Vikings and basically did what he thought was a victory lap. And it turned out to still be a real interview, and he didn't get the job offer, or he wouldn't be Michigan's head coach right now. And the second thing that we can't fully assess until we have more evidence, which I hope comes via discovery or FOI requests or whatever, what might this scandal have meant to opposing teams in terms of player safety? And that's been a real issue driven home to me, once again, by coaches I've talked to. And I need to stress, and you've heard from way more than me, but it's not just Big Ten coaches. I've heard from ACC coaches, from SEC
all over the country,
coaches, from Group of 5 coaches, from high school coaches who are just like, you're messing with kids' livelihoods potentially if you know exactly what's coming, or even if crash the right side of the line because it's run right, and you can send everybody there to blow up the play.
I've probably received 100 texts or DMs in the last 2 days on this subject. 90% of them are what they're doing is horrible, and the Big Ten needs to take action. The other 10 are from Michigan fans, and they're just furious at me because they're Michigan fans, and they think that I'm trying to besmirch the greatest football coach in the history of the world, which I'm like, guys, settle down here.
And again, let us know very emphatically. Not only have we had tremendous respect for the Michigan program has had multiple winners of our Football Scoop of the Coach of the Year awards. So, hello, like this is just doing
There's
our
no bias
job,
here.
and this is just what it boils down to me is all the coaches I've heard from saying you don't cheat the game.
Integrity
And I
of the
have
game,
not had
seriously.
a coach tell me, yeah, I have not had a single coach tell me we don't ever try to figure out the other team's signals. No, every coach has said we absolutely do that. You check the TV copy, you try to match it up when you watch the replays, you have guys studying that, but you don't go in person. You don't use this sort of technology. You don't use what appeared to be either the Google Snapchat glasses on the sidelines at Central Michigan or the Ray-Ban smart sunglasses or whatever. You don't use those things to try and cheat the system.
This should all play out Wednesday, maybe Thursday, if the Big Ten continues to push forward. Santa Ono continues behind the scenes and publicly and leaking it publicly, trying to get public support for his guys. It seems that the Big Ten's moving forward, and we'll all know more Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, because look, the Big Ten either moves forward or it sends a message that the Big Ten is Michigan and everyone else. And that's just a dangerous situation.
Yeah, I'd be stunned if they don't take some sort of action. And I'd be extremely surprised if this is not way more than what people think. You know, people were throwing out there, this could be 2 games. It's not going to be 2 games. This is going to be a significant penalty for JIm and others, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I would be stunned if it's not and others, because boy, there are a lot of people involved in this, a lot.
And so in that regard, maybe it's staggered. Maybe it starts with JIm and some other punishments are staggered. Once again, I think if you try to punish everyone apparently involved right now, and even if JIm was not, his program, his responsibility, and by the way, he's already under investigation for those other things. But if you try to penalize everyone seemingly involved right now, it becomes dangerous to the current student athletes, in my opinion. That's why I think it could be staggered. But I do think it's important to note one quick bit of semantics that's out there saying that the NCAA has found transgressions, but it falls under the Big Ten sportsmanship rule. Well, that makes no sense to me. And again, I'll point all day long to the coach control policy that has been enacted. We just saw it enacted earlier this year when final penalties were handed down, and Jeremy Pruitt was absolutely deservedly hammered for the transgressions and violations at the University of Tennessee, even though he pled ignorance. That was not a viable defense, and I don't see how it would be a viable defense in something that is years long, multifaceted, well orchestrated, and apparently very well funded.
Well, I think what's going on there is the Big Ten is moving faster than the NCAA can possibly move. So the Big Ten's going to go ahead and take this action now. The NCAA, it's not precluding from the NCAA from coming back when they finish their investigation in 2026. They might find that the Big Ten was right. Can you imagine that? So this is a first step.
Right.
Good stuff. I'm at Football Scoop. He's at John Brice 1. We're on Twitter all the time, footballscoop.com. We appreciate everybody's time. We're out.